They say time heals all wounds, but some cuts run too deep to ever fully heal. I'm Emily, and 3 years ago I lost my only child, my beautiful boy Lucas, to leukemia. He was only 12. The kind of loss that reshapes your whole world, leaving you to navigate a reality you never wanted to face. I remember the day we got the diagnosis like it was yesterday. Lucas had been tired, more than usual for an active 12-year-old. Bruises appeared on his legs that he couldn't explain. When the doctor said the word leukemia, my world stopped spinning. The next 8 months were a blur of hospital rooms, chemotherapy sessions, and desperate prayers. Through it all, Lucas remained our ray of sunshine. "Mom," he'd say during the long nights in the hospital, "when I get better, can we go to Disney World? I want to ride Space Mountain." I'd smile and add it to our growing list of future plans, trying to hide my tears as I watched my once energetic boy grow weaker each day. The college fund had been Lucas's idea, actually. He was always thinking ahead, even at 12. "I want to be a doctor, Mom," he told me one day during treatment, his face serious despite the cartoon-covered hospital gown he wore. "So I can help other kids like me." That night, I opened the college savings account, determined to make his dream come true. I put every spare penny into that account. My job as a high school teacher didn't pay much, but I managed to save $47,000 over the years. It was my way of holding on to hope, of believing in a future where Lucas would grow up to wear a white coat and save lives. But life had other plans. Lucas passed away on a quiet Sunday morning in April. One moment he was there, holding my hand, telling me not to cry, and the next, he was gone. The world kept turning somehow, even though my reason for existing had slipped away. That's when my younger brother Michael stepped in. He'd always been the successful one in the family, investment banker, living in the city, the one who had it all figured out. When he offered to manage Lucas's college fund, to make it grow through his investment expertise, I agreed. Maybe it was grief clouding my judgment, or maybe I just needed something to believe in again. "Trust me, Em," he said, his confident smile so reminiscent of our childhood days when he convinced me to go along with his schemes. "I'll make sure Lucas's money helps other kids achieve their dreams. We'll set up a scholarship in his name." I signed the papers, transferring control of the account to Michael. Our parents praised his generosity, calling him a guardian angel for stepping in to help their grieving daughter. Even then, something felt off, but I pushed the feeling aside. After all, he was family. For the next 2 years, I threw myself into teaching, trying to fill the Lucas-shaped hole in my heart by helping other children reach their potential. Michael would send me quarterly statements showing how the investment was growing, complete with complicated charts and financial jargon I barely understood. I wanted to believe everything was fine. Then came the wedding invitation. Michael was marrying Sophia, his girlfriend of 6 months. The envelope was thick, cream-colored paper with gold embossing. Clearly expensive. Inside was an invitation to what promised to be the society event of the year. Ceremony at the Grand Plaza Hotel, followed by a reception for 300 guests, with a 5-course dinner and live entertainment. Isn't it exciting? My mother gushed over the phone. "Michael says they're flying in orchids from Thailand for the centerpieces. And wait until you see Sophia's dress. It cost more than my first car." Something about the extravagance made my stomach turn. Michael had always lived well, but this seemed over the top even for him. Still, I pushed my concerns aside and focused on being happy for my brother. After all, he'd been there for me during my darkest days. The wedding was exactly as advertised, a showcase of wealth and excess. Crystal chandeliers dripped from the ceiling, champagne flowed freely, and the orchid centerpieces were works of art. I sat at my assigned table, feeling out of place in my department store dress, watching Michael and Sophia twirl across the dance floor. "You should be proud," the woman next to me said, introducing herself as one of Sophia's aunts. "Your brother certainly knows how to throw a party. Though I hear they went a bit over budget. Something about unexpected investment losses." My blood ran cold. Investment losses. The woman nodded, warming to her gossip. "Oh yes, apparently some of his clients' accounts took quite a hit. But Michael wasn't about to let that stop him from giving Sophia her dream wedding. She leaned in closer, lowering her voice, moved some money around. You know how these financial types are, always robbing Peter to pay Paul." I excused myself and headed for the bathroom, my head spinning. Surely she was mistaken. Michael wouldn't. He couldn't have. But as I thought back over the past few months, the increasingly complex statements, the delayed responses to my questions about the scholarship program, his sudden lavish wedding, pieces started falling into place. That night, I couldn't sleep. As soon as I got home, I dug out all the statements Michael had sent me and really looked at them for the first time. The numbers didn't add up. The charts seemed to be copied from different sources. How had I been so blind? The next morning, I called the bank where the original college fund had been held. After providing my documentation, the customer service representative confirmed my worst fears. The account had been empty 8 months ago. Every penny of Lucas's college fund, gone. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the bank statements, feeling like I couldn't breathe. The money wasn't just savings. It was Lucas's legacy, his dream of helping other children transform into Thai orchids and champagne fountains. When I confronted Michael over the phone, his response chilled me to the bone. It was just sitting there. Emily, he said, his voice carrying that same confident tone he'd always used to talk his way out of trouble. The money wasn't doing anyone any good. Lucas is gone. He doesn't need it anymore. I had expenses, the wedding. I'll pay you back eventually. I hung up without saying another word. That night, I started gathering evidence, bank statements, transfer records, copies of the original agreement where Michael promised to manage the fund for scholarship purposes. I documented everything, building a case while trying to contain the rage and betrayal threatening to consume me. 2 weeks after the wedding, Michael called again. This time, his voice had lost its usual swagger. I need your help, he said, trying to sound casual, but I could hear the desperation underneath. Sophia and I found the perfect house. But with the wedding expenses and some investment complications, we're a little short on the down payment. I was hoping. I cut him off. How much did the orchids cost, Michael? What? The orchids. At your wedding. The ones from Thailand. How much did they cost? I don't see what that has to do with. They were beautiful. I continued, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. I bet they cost about as much as a semester of college. The champagne fountain probably covered another semester. The ice sculptures. Maybe those could have funded a year of medical school. Emily, you're not still upset about the college fund, are you? I told you, I'll pay it back. I have copies of everything, I said quietly. Every transfer, every fake statement, every document you forged. I've spent the past 2 weeks building a case that would make any prosecutor very, very interested. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. You wouldn't, he finally whispered. I'm your brother. And Lucas was my son. I let those words hang in the air between us, heavy with all they implied. Then I told him exactly what I planned to do next. The family meeting was set for Sunday dinner at my parents' house. I arrived early, my folder of evidence tucked under my arm, my heart pounding against my ribs. Mom was in the kitchen, humming as she prepared her famous pot roast. The same meal she'd made the night Michael convinced me to sign over Lucas's college fund. Emily, sweetie. She turned from the stove, wiping her hands on her apron. You're early. Michael and Sophia should be here soon. They have such exciting news about a house they're looking at. I set my folder on the dining room table. Yes, Mom. I know all about the house. Something in my tone made her pause, the smile faltering on her face. Before she could question me further, the front door opened. Dad walked in, followed by Michael and Sophia. My brother's usual confidence seemed dimmed, his shoulders tense. Sophia floated in wearing designer clothes that probably cost more than my monthly salary, still radiating that newly glow. Emily. Sophia air-kissed my cheek. You'll never believe it. We found the most amazing house in Riverside Heights. 5 bedrooms, pool, everything we've dreamed of. Michael says you might be able to help us with the down payment. I smiled tightly. Actually, I have something to show everyone. Why don't we sit down? Mom brought the pot roast to the table, and we took our usual seats. The familiar scene felt surreal. How many Sunday dinners had we shared here, while Michael sat on his secrets, spending my dead son's money? Before we eat, I said, opening my folder, I'd like to talk about Lucas's college fund. The change in the room was instant. Michael's face went pale, Sophia looked confused, and my parents exchanged glances. Emily, Michael started, this isn't the time. It's exactly the time. I pulled out the first document, the original agreement Michael had signed. 2 years ago, after Lucas died, Michael offered to manage his college fund. He promised to turn it into a scholarship program to help other children. Instead, one by one, I laid out the evidence. Bank statements showing the complete withdrawal of funds. Copies of the fake quarterly reports Michael had sent me. Documentation of transfers to wedding vendors, the florist, the caterer, the venue. $47,000, I said, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. Every penny I saved for Lucas's future, gone. Spent on orchids and ice sculptures and champagne fountains. Michael? Mom's voice was barely a whisper. Tell me this isn't true. My brother's face had gone from pale to ashen. Sophia sat frozen, her perfectly manicured hands gripping the edge of the table. I was going to pay it back, he stammered. The market took a downturn. I had some losses, the wedding expenses. The wedding expenses, I cut in. You mean your 300-person extravaganza? The one with flowers flown in from Thailand? That's what you spent my dead son's college fund on. Emily, Dad's voice held a warning note. He's your brother. We can work this out as a family. Work what out? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. How he stole from his dead nephew. How he took money meant to help sick children and spent it on a party. I didn't steal it. Michael's voice rose. You signed it over to me. I had every legal right. Legal right? The words exploded from me. Lucas trusted you. I trusted you. He wanted that money to help other kids like him, children fighting for their lives in hospital beds while you. Sophia suddenly stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. I didn't know, she said, her voice shaking. Michael told me the wedding was paid for with his bonus. He said. She turned to my brother, tears in her eyes. What else have you lied about? Sophia, baby, please. Michael reached for her hand, but she pulled away. The house down payment, she continued, realization dawning on her face. That's why you wanted to ask Emily for help. Because you've already spent. I can explain everything, Michael pleaded, but Sophia was already grabbing her purse, heading for the door. The sound of it slamming behind her echoed through the suddenly silent house. Mom was crying quietly. Dad's face had aged 10 years, and Michael sat slumped in his chair, his carefully constructed world crumbling around him. I've spoken to a lawyer, I said, gathering my documents back into the folder. He says we have enough evidence for both civil and criminal charges. Fraud, embezzlement, misappropriation of funds. You can't be serious, Dad interrupted. He's family. Family? I stood up, my chair scraping back. Lucas was family too, your grandson. But I don't remember you being this concerned when he was dying. When was the last time you visited his grave? Do you even remember what he looked like? The silence that followed was deafening. My parents couldn't meet my eyes. I'm giving you a choice, Michael, I continued. Pay back every penny of Lucas's money, with interest, or I'm going to the police. You have 48 hours to decide. I walked out of my parents' house that night and never looked back. Michael scraped together the money somehow, probably by selling his fancy car and borrowing from whatever friends he had left. The payment arrived by certified check exactly 47 hours later. I used the money to establish the Lucas Thompson Memorial Scholarship Fund, properly this time through a legitimate charitable foundation. Every year, it helps cover medical school costs for students who want to specialize in pediatric oncology. The first recipient was a young woman whose brother had died of leukemia. When she told me she wanted to help ensure no other family went through what hers did, I heard Lucas's voice in her words. My parents still try to reach out occasionally. They send cards on holidays, leave voicemails about healing the family. I delete them without listening. Some betrayals cut too deep to forgive. Last week, I received an invitation to a fundraising gala for the children's hospital where Lucas was treated. As I walked through the hospital halls, memories flooded back, both painful and precious. But this time, they didn't overwhelm me. In the pediatric oncology wing, there's a new play area for the young patients. A plaque on the wall reads, "The Lucas Thompson Memorial Playroom." It's bright and cheerful, filled with toys and games and books. In one corner, a boy about Lucas's age was reading a medical textbook, his IV pole beside him. "I'm going to be a doctor," he told me proudly when he saw me looking. "I want to help other kids like me." I smiled through my tears, thinking of another boy who had said those same words. Lucas's money might have been stolen, but his dream lived on. Sometimes that's all we can ask for. That the love we put into the world finds its way back somehow. That our losses become someone else's beginning. Michael and Sophia divorced 6 months after that Sunday dinner. I heard through mutual friends that he lost his job when word got out about what he'd done. Last I knew, he was living in a small apartment, working at a local bank, a far cry from his investment banker days. Sometimes I wonder if he thinks about Lucas, if he feels any remorse for what he did. But mostly, I've learned to let go of those questions. The scholarship fund has helped 12 students so far. Each spring, I receive letters from them, telling me about their studies, their hopes, their plans to make a difference. I keep these letters in a special box alongside Lucas's photos. When I read them, I can almost hear him saying, "See, Mom, dreams really do come true, just not always the way we expect." He would have been 15 this year. Sometimes I imagine him as he might have been, taller, voice deeper, but still with that gentle heart that made him want to help others. In my darkest moments when the loss feels fresh and raw, I remember what he taught me about love and forgiveness. But some things are beyond forgiveness. What Michael did wasn't just a betrayal of me. It was a betrayal of Lucas's memory, of his dream to help other children. That's a debt that can't be repaid with money alone. Yesterday, I visited Lucas's grave. I do this every Sunday, bringing fresh flowers and telling him about my week. This time, I told him about the scholarship recipients, about the new playroom, about all the ways his spirit lives on in the lives he's helping to shape. "You did it, baby," I whispered, touching the cool stone. "You're helping other kids just like you wanted. And Mom's making sure no one can ever take that away again." As I walked back to my car, the setting sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink. Lucas loved sunsets. He used to say they were proof that endings could be beautiful. Standing there in the fading light, I finally understood what he meant. Some endings are painful, cutting us off from people we once thought we'd never live without. But sometimes those endings make space for new beginnings, for different kinds of family, not bound by blood, but by something stronger, the choice to honor what matters most. Lucas taught me that, and in the end, that lesson was worth more than any amount of money Michael could have stolen.